And you guys, I've got a walk and talk here today all about the relentlessness of this narrative we have in our heads about who we are, how we live our lives, what we believe, all the things. And it's going to blow your mind when you realize this, because a lot of people, they don't realize they have these narratives, these stories about their life that kind of dictate who they are. So we're going to get into that here in just a moment, but come on in, guys. Make yourselves at home. Hope you're having a great weekend. It is a gorgeous sunny day, as it has been the last few weeks here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Really warm today. Like usually the cold weather has been nice for Jimmy, because Jimmy, as you guys know, loves the cold. But this warmer temps are starting to get a little warm. So I think we're like in the low 70s right now here in South Carolina. And that's a little toastier than Jimmy likes. So we may be pushing this back earlier in the day to help accommodate my need for, I don't need to get overheated. So even last week, I think last week it was in the like low 60s, low to mid 60s. And by the time I got back, I was so sweaty, so hot. I know I'm very easily overheated, so this is why I love walking in the winter with just the shorts and t-shirt on. But coming in, guys, I've got a great topic to talk about here today for the walk and talk. And for those of you that are new, Sundays at 11 a.m., I have been doing, basically, I'm walking on my little trail. This is the trail right next to my house, and I walk about 4 miles. So I do 2 miles, turn around and come back. And dog scared the shit out of me. It's like, holy crap. So I walk 4 miles. It's usually about 60 to 70 minutes-ish for me to walk it. So why not come on here and talk to you guys? And usually my topic is on mindset stuff. The one last week, by the way, you guys, that one blew up. So many people were like, wow, you were on fire talking about all the things regarding not weighing yourself and a lot of the mindsets about that. So thank you for all the great feedback on last week's episode. If you missed it, it's still on Instagram and on YouTube, all the places that I put it. But today, you guys, I want to talk about this topic of the relentless narrative we tell ourselves, because there are so many messages about our lives that we have to believe in order to believe and do the things that we do. So think about that. This may be a new concept to you that you didn't even stop and think about before. Think about why you believe things that are true. Okay? Some people will say, well, I believe certain things are true because I've seen empirical evidence of their veracity, and so therefore I've seen it firsthand for myself, so it must be true. Okay, those are pretty cut and dry. If you got facts to support why you believe something, great. What, though, do you do with those things that you have come up with facts in your head about, and then you later find out they're not true at all? Okay, this is going to be a little philosophical today, so stick with me. What do you do? And I'll give you some hard examples here in a minute. What do you do with the concept of something where you make an assumption on someone or some circumstance? What do you do when you don't have all the details? And when things are certainly quiet on parts of it? What does the human brain do? The brain has a very interesting capacity to fill in the gaps. And it does. The brain will tell you certain things about that event, about that person, based on your prior interaction with the people or events. And it will extrapolate based on prior behavior what's going on now. Okay? So the problem with that narrative that you create in your head is it may not be true. It may not be true. And so therefore, Your whole belief system is set up on and predicated on this notion of something that may or may not be true. So let's take relationships for a minute. Imagine there's somebody in your life who you are estranged from, okay? And they're being very quiet with you, and you don't know why. They just went real quiet, suddenly just stopped talking to you, and despite your best efforts to reconnect with them, to find out what's wrong, they're being non-communicative. So what does your brain do? Your brain's like, okay, let's go back over the course of my life with the interactions I've had with this person. And so you start thinking through all those interactions. And from that, your brain processes a narrative. Well, they did this. They said that. And so therefore, the reason they're quiet with me now has to be this and that. Can you see how that would lead to a flawed reasoning? Can you see how you could get yourself into trouble making that a narrative in your head? And yet, consciously or not, we all do it. We all do it every single day. Because one thing the brain does not like is uncertainty. So, where there is uncertainty, your brain will always fill in the gaps. Your brain will try to make conclusions about things when there is uncertainty, when there is lack of communication. And I see this all the time, you guys, where people just assume others are or are not doing things for reasons that aren't valid at all. What you may not know is that that person may be going through a life crisis. That person who you're estranged from may be having a difficulty of their own in their life. And the best way they know how to handle it is to cut off contact with everyone. And yet you made it personal, trying to figure out what is it that you did wrong or some other reason. Do you see how that narrative can lead you down the path of creating strife that really doesn't exist? And it's why, as I've gotten older, I have tried to become more empathetic, more compassionate, more understanding, especially when things are confusing, when things just don't seem right. I don't jump automatically to assumptions. A lot of people do. A lot of people, well, if they're not going to contact me, then I'll just never talk to them ever again. What good does that do? Who are you serving at that point? At that point, you've made this personal. You've made this all about you and not really taking in what might be going on. And so this whole relentless narrative that we tell ourselves, this is the cautionary tale. Never make assumptions of what you think the other person is saying or not saying by what they're doing by staying silent with you. I know that's hard because the first thing we want to do is go, well, what did I do wrong? Well, I didn't do anything wrong, so what did they do wrong? And your brain's going to go down that weird path of creating this narrative. And it's hard. It's very hard. But there are kind of revelations that can come out from time to time when you have those narratives in your head and then the narrative gets turned over. That just happened to me yesterday. I have a relationship with someone where I owe this person money, and I told them that I didn't have the money yet, but I would have it by next week. And this person has been estranged from me for about a half a year. Hadn't heard anything from them. And I was bracing because the expectation was the money would be there on Friday. And so I wrote on Friday that I didn't have the money, but I would get the money to them by this next week. And the narrative in my head about this person, since they had cut me off, was, well, they're upset at me, they're vindictive towards me, and they will lash out at me if I say I don't pay on time. All right. So that was the narrative that Jimmy had. Guess what happened, though? What happened is I wrote and explained the circumstance. And this person that had not reached out for 6 months suddenly said, you know, I understand. And I know you'll still pay. Just get it to me when you can, when you get paid. What? What? Like that blew me away, you guys. Because this is somebody who, in my mind, had kind of written me off. I assumed was mad at me. I assumed didn't want anything to do with me, except for the money I owed. And here they were showing a different side, another narrative. So it's very easy to let your brain go down that path of assuming things. I would say a good strategy is, rather than assuming, why not give people the benefit of the doubt? Why not assume the best? We always assume the worst, don't we? We go down the path in our brains of, well, they're being quiet, so that must be malicious. Why do we jump there? Why do we assume that it has to be a negative thing? I would say more times than not, it's not a negative thing. More times than not, it's just people get caught up in their lives. I'll tell you another example. So a lot of the people in the keto and carnivore community, we would interact with one another quite a bit on social media. And when the pandemic hit and everything, things got weird. And now that things are somewhat getting back to normal, I don't see those people anymore. Now, it would be easy for my brain to tell me a narrative that says, well, look, they got snobby on me. Look who's good to come on my page and talk to me anymore. You know, it would be easy for my brain to go there. And quite frankly, it does go there. How could it not? Good morning. And so I have come to the conclusion that people got enough to deal with on their own. This is not personal against Jimmy. As much as it can feel that way, you can sometimes feel personally these things. Much as it might feel that way, it's not personal. And so I'm not taking it as such. I realize they're in different places. And then when you reach out to them directly, and hey, what's up? You doing okay? Oh yeah, wow, I haven't been in contact in a while. I'm sorry about that. And they're contrite about it when you're like talking to them. So all these assumptions in your head, because of this narrative, are so wrong. Are you getting what I'm saying here? That we believe things, we act on things, not based on reality, but based on the imagined reality that we come up with. The narrative that we believe. And guys, these narratives, they can be relentless. They will loop over and over and over again to the point that you believe they're 100% true. And the only reason you do that is because of the repetition of the belief being reinforced in your head constantly. You're constantly telling yourself this narrative. Now let me get a little personal with you guys. You do this too. See if any of this sounds familiar. I can't lose weight. I have tried everything in the world and I just can't lose weight. Okay, that's one. How about, Oh, well, I guess I'm never going to get anywhere in my career. Good morning. I'm never going to get anywhere in my career. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not skilled enough. I can't. Okay? Both of those examples are narratives that you're telling yourself. And look, my best friends in the world, and at least one of them is on here right now. My best friends in the world, they know if they start saying that bullshit to Jimmy Moore, I'm going to call their ass out. I'm going to call you out because I think we put so many limitations on ourselves with the narratives that we believe. And look, I get it. Narratives are how we live our lives. It's kind of the edicts by which you live. And if you don't have something that you're tying on to about who you are, core values and everything, core values are great. But a narrative is not a core value. A narrative is a story you're telling yourself about circumstances and people in your life. And so if that narrative is based on assumptions and not facts, you're going to go down a very dangerous path mentally. And it's not going to serve you well. So stop assuming you've tried everything to lose weight. Stop assuming you're not good enough in your career. Stop assuming that no person will ever want to be with you in a love relationship because you've convinced yourself you're too ugly, you're too whatever. Those are narratives. And if you can correct those narratives and you catch them in real time, guys, you're going to open your eyes to a whole nother universe for yourself. You're going to make yourself realize, holy crap, how much of my life has been believing things that have never been true. Not once. They've not been true, but you made yourself believe it because you kept saying them over and over and over again. Good morning. And so I hope you're getting the spirit of what I'm sharing here today, because I feel like we all do this to some degree or another. Some people are so buried in their own narrative, they can't even see it. So stop and evaluate literally every part of who you are, every part of what you believe, every story in your head. Just stop and think those through. I'm never going to find somebody. I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. Do you really believe that narrative? Some people do. They have convinced themselves of that. And I'm not saying having those thoughts are necessarily bad. The thoughts are human. So trust me, Jimmy's had that specific thought many times. But it's what you do with it. Do you dwell on that and then therefore you're gonna freak out on this one? When you dwell on a narrative to the point of believing your own bullshit, you manifest it. In other words, your narrative becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at some point. You tell yourself something so strongly, so often, so resolute that there's no question about it whatsoever. You tell yourself that over and over and over again. Don't be surprised when it becomes true. That doesn't mean that the narrative was true. It means you made it true based on your reaction to the narrative that you thought was true but was never true, but you made it true, so therefore it became true in your life. Can I get a witness, anyone? I feel like so many people go through their lives and that is the crux of who they are. Let's make up some idea about life, about what we think and what we believe and what's true and what's not true. Let's make that shit up. And you make it up and you say it again and again. It starts to become so much a part of who you are, you don't know who you are apart from the lie. I'm gonna let that sink in a little bit, because that's some deep ass shit right there. It is. And when you finally catch yourself and you finally realize that a lot of your life is predicated on things that were never true and will never be true, events and people aren't out to get you, your life will change, guys. And look, I've done a lot of work on myself these past 3 years, where I really had to question a lot of the things I believe, a lot of the things that I thought were just absolutely true narratives in my head. And I still struggle with it. You're gonna have that struggle, and it's okay to struggle with it. But the key is not to stay there, not to stay mired in the thinking. The first way to coming out of it is self-awareness. So now, you ain't got no excuses. You heard today's walk and talk, and Jimmy Moore dropping some bombs on you. Now, I want you, every time you have a thought and a belief and a narrative pop in your head, I want you to think, is that true? Okay, if I believe it's true, what's my evidence? What is the evidence of it being true? Not what is your brain telling you, but what is the evidence? And if you don't have hard evidence, it means that narrative is probably not true. And guys, it took me almost my entire life to come to this realization. 47 years old, my life was a mess. I was broken. I was falling apart mentally, and I didn't know why. And a lot of the reason why was I believed narratives. I believed I was stuck in a certain mode of thinking, a certain way of living, and that if I broke free from that, I was somehow losing myself. And it wasn't until I made the decision to stop believing narratives, to start living in my true self, that I finally was able to actually live who I really am. And when you get to that point, guys, not everybody's gonna like you. They like the narrative version of you. They like their narrative of who you are. You've changed. Wow, that's so radical from who you were. Yeah, who I was not who I was. So you bet your sweet bippy, I'm not who I was then. Be proud of the changes. Don't allow anyone to shame you for actually living who you are now. I did. There was a version of me that everybody saw, but 3 years ago, I changed that version of me, and then I became me. And I became more resolute about me. And I let go of narratives about me that I had created. And quite frankly, let's go there, that other people had created for me. You've got other people in your life who are going to have these thoughts about you. And you're in this box. This defines who you are. You are nothing more than what I say you are in this very confined little box you are in. You ever feel that way? You ever feel like people put you in that box, confine you to certain parameters, and if you go outside that parameter, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. That's their narrative for you. I don't let anybody put me in a box. If you try to define me, I will correct how you get it wrong, because I know the real truth about me and not your narrative about me. And guys, when I came to terms with a lot of the childhood trauma stuff, along with a big life thing that happened to me, simultaneous to the trauma stuff, I dealt with some shit 3 years ago. When I finally came to terms with all of that, was when life changed. Like, that revelation about my childhood trauma totally upended my narrative. My narrative was always, well, my stepdad had me sent away to live with my dad, who then later beat the crap out of me. And then I come back home in my 20s. I was 14. I come back home in my 20s to my mom, and I say something along the line of, I don't know if I could ever forgive you for sending me to live with my dad after he had beaten me and scolded me, berated me, scarred me a long time, scarred me. And she made a comment at the time. This is, again, I'm in my early 20s, like 21. She said, "Oh, get over it." In my head, I heard that as callous and cold, and how could she say such a thing? Because of the trauma, the physical beatings, the mental beratement, the psychological abuse, all the things that my dad did to me. I, in my mind, said, wow, my mom doesn't care. That was the narrative. How could I not believe that, you guys? How could I think anything else than, wow, okay, not only did the one parent beat the shit out of me and tell me I'd never amount to anything and tell me no girl will ever want you and all these negative things that he'd said to me over and over and over, that actually happened. But now the other parent is saying, you'll get over it. That messed with me psychologically all through my 20s. Literally feel like my 20s were a blur. Because they were. Now, flash forward. 3 years ago, my stepdad died. I go to see my mom, and I said, "Mom, can I ask you, why did his name was Frank, the stepdad. Why did Frank have me sent away to live with my dad?" And this is where the narrative that I had in my head got exploded. She said, "Oh, Frank didn't send you away. I did." "I'm sorry, what?" "Oh yeah, you and Frank were butting heads, and I was afraid he might kill you. So I had you sent away to live with your dad because I was worried that you would be harmed here." So I was like, first of all, Mom, we're going to table the discussion that you were willing to be with a man that you thought was capable of hurting your son. Let's table that for a moment. But you sent me away because you thought it was going to protect me from being abused? Is that what you're saying? She said, "Yeah." I said, "You do know what my dad did, right?" And then I changed her narrative. She had no idea that I had been beat. She had no idea that I had been mentally berated. Remember, this is 3 years ago. She's just learning this. She had no idea about any of it. And when I told her, you guys, that narrative in her mind got turned upside down and she turned white as a ghost. She did not know all that I went through. And of course, in my mind, I was like, how could you not know? It's a small little town. Relatives of yours there, they knew directly all of this was happening. And none of them called you? None of them let you know? So her narrative in her mind of my childhood with my dad, my teenage years, was that he was strict and tough, but she didn't know the extent of the beatings, mentally and physically. And so she's like, "Oh my God, I would have pulled you out of there." I'm like, "Mom, you would have pulled me out, but to what? Bring me home to be potentially abused and maybe killed by your new husband?" You see how the narrative of that early 20s now, where she said, "Oh, you'll get over it," her mind was about the narrative of, "Oh, he was just tough." She didn't realize he would throw my head into walls. He would choke me. He would beat me. He would berate me. He would demasculate me. And of course, that impacted relationships for me. Too afraid to bring a girl home. Then I go off to college. I don't know how to talk to girls. Led me down a really bad path in my life. And narratives. It all started with the narrative. And I know that was heavy, and so I apologize I didn't warn you in advance. It's going to be a heavy story, guys. But I think it illustrates what I'm sharing here today on the Walk and Talk of we have these very clear narratives that we tell ourselves, and we speak them into truth when they may not be truthful at all. And all of these narratives become a part of the stories of our life. We all have these stories. Think about the stories of who you are. Just think about all of them. Think about them. Why do you believe them? Why are these narratives in your mind defining who you are? Are they true? Are they partially true? Or are they completely false? But they're stories that make your life seem to fit. That's the other thing about narratives. We don't want our life to seem like it's in disarray. And so narratives, stories, give a finer point to what our life has been about. And even if you have to make up some narratives to make that finer point, look, it's kind of like those based on a true story movies. Not all true stories are great, dramatic, cinematic stories. And so sometimes the directors and producers of these films, they say based on a true story, but what that means is this really happened, but maybe not the way we say it happened. They created narratives and extrapolations and sometimes took very social liberties to make the movie entertaining of something that may or may not have actually happened. And that's what we do. We sometimes add in a little bit of fluff, a little bit of idealism, a little bit of what we hoped could be. Or, if things were bad, sometimes we make them even worse than they really were so as to seek sympathy for our cause. We do that as well. Gosh, I know that this is so deep today, you guys, and I don't apologize for the depth of my walk and talks because I feel like they serve a good purpose when I do that. All right, papers, you're going to cover up the camera. How are they supposed to see my handsome face if it covers up the camera? So the main thing is to start noticing all the things you tell yourself. Start noticing those things that maybe you just took for granted before. You just assumed automatically were true. How about stop believing those things inherently? How about start looking at what actually is? Start giving people the benefit of the doubt. Start looking at situations that you perceive as a bad thing, and you've created a story behind something in your life as being bad. Start looking at what good came out of it. Because I don't care what the bad circumstance is. Every bad circumstance can be reframed into, what did I learn from it? How am I better today because of it? Every story that we tell ourselves can be reframed that way. Every one of them. And a lot of these narratives we tell are of the negative. But what happens if you change that narrative to think more positive about it? Now, I get it. There's some really horrible situations. If you were raped as a kid, I'm not trying to tell you put a shine on that turd, because that's a big fat turd. So don't misunderstand me. What I am saying is, if you were raped as a kid and you're still alive today, that's a win. If you were raped as a kid and you still found love and made a family and grew from that, that's a win. If you were raped as a kid and now today you're trying to use your voice to speak up for those people that go through similar circumstances and fall apart, that's a big win. So we got to look at these things through the prism of, yes, it might have been bad, but what did I learn? How did I grow? How did I survive and overcome? And that will help you reframe these narratives. So you're not dwelling on just the bad things and telling yourself over and over and over again, this is why my life sucks. And a lot of people use narratives for that reason. Well, this, and this happened to me, so therefore I can do whatever I want in my life. No consequences because I'm owed. And I know I'm going long-winded today, guys, but this is such an important topic. Such an important topic that needs to be talked about. The bad things in your life do not give you a get-out-of-jail-free card for how you live your life now. You have to take the circumstances that you were dealt, and all of us were dealt something, some more than others. You take that heaping pile of shit and you make something out of it for the good. Because otherwise you're just going to eat yourself alive with the guilt and the shame, the lament. And trust me, I have a story I wish I could tell you, but it was a very impactful story in my life. I share a lot of myself. I will never share this part of me. Only my closest friends know this story. But there was something that happened in my life that if you heard the details, it would make the hair on the back of your head stand up. Suffice it to say, it had a major impact on my narrative of what I believed about myself. And to this day, I'm still battling that narrative. Still trying to pick up the pieces of how I got caught up in that for so long. But I can tell you, standing here today, I'm better off. I'm better off because I'm on the other side of that. The narrative has switched, although I still have moments where I think about it. But a lot better than it was. And it was possible this narrative was going to be with me for my entire life had I not made a decision in my life to stop it. And that decision to stop it required me to take bold action that nobody thought I would ever do, and that everybody thought was, whoa, what's going on? But they didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. But I knew. And when I became self-aware of it, I had to let that go. I had to stop holding on to it. And there's about a dozen people in my life who know that story. A couple of them are on here right now. And it's not fully my story to tell publicly, so I won't. But suffice it to say, it impacted me greatly and changed a whole lot of narrative about who I was. All right, I'm gonna come to you guys in a minute. I got a few more things. One of the things you can do about this, having a narrative, is rather than believing it's true, why don't you start looking at it like a dream? If you imagine that it's a dream, that doesn't mean it's false. It just means it's not solid. And so if it's uncertain, you can call it a dream. That helps your brain, okay, this narrative feels real, sounds real, could be real, but it's just a dream until I get more solid information. That's one way to help your mind wrap around it and understand it better. And then, this is a big one, you guys. Never, ever, ever act on that narrative. Hey, never act on the thing that you believe as a narrative, because what if it's not true? And look, I'm guilty of that. I have been guilty of believing narratives. And then when I act on it, the people involved go, whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing? And I'm like, but this, and this. And then my narrative gets blown up and they're like, here's the reality. And then what you have is discord in relationships and hurt feelings, all because you believed something that wasn't true. So make sure that that thing that you have as a narrative, that you don't act on it until you know that you know that you know that you know that it's actually true. So many people act on assumptions. They assume things are true, and therefore that makes it true. And we wonder why there's such discord in the world. We wonder why relationships crumble and fall. Friendships, love relationships, family. It's all because narratives take over. When I made the decision to leave my wife and separated from her, the narrative got out there in the Moore side of the family that I was the bad guy. And to this day, I still have estrangement from that side of the family. Now, that also coincided with all the revelations about my childhood trauma coming out and me talking about it in my work, and my dad getting upset because I was talking publicly about it. He got upset to my mom, telling him it was all lies. So the narrative in his mind was, well, Jimmy's lying. Even though he knows cognitively that I'm not lying, he's convinced himself because his narrative was, well, I was no harder on him than my dad was on me. Well, his dad beat the shit out of him too. So the narrative is based on his experience. Well, that's what you do. You beat the shit out of your kids. Isn't that how you discipline them? Spare the rod, spoil the child. He took that Bible verse to the extreme, because he did more than the rod. I don't think the rod includes throwing your son's head into walls, beating the crap out of them in a public place, fondling them in places you're not supposed to touch by making them get naked in a shower. None of that is sparing the rod. It's true. Guys, I'm being blunt, vulnerable with you today. I hope you are appreciating the gravity of the stories I'm telling, because it hammers home this point about the narratives. And then the Moore side of the family cutting me off because I decided to leave my wife. They took her side, they took her narrative, and today I don't have contact with them. Now, my narrative now is they don't want anything to do with me. But I kind of know that's not true, because I see them all watching my stories. They don't know that I can see who goes to my stories and looks at them. They never like my posts, they never comment, but they watch everything I do. And it's like, all right, they're still interested, but they haven't sought to reconcile. So in my mind, I don't think they've completely cut me off. I don't know if they're expecting me to come forward and apologize or explain myself, which I don't feel like I'm required to do either one. I did nothing wrong, and I don't have anything to explain, because the full details about why I left is none of their business or anybody's business. That's between me and her. So that narrative, I'm not sure if it's ever going to get changed on their end of things, thinking I'm the bad guy. Even though I'm blood, I'm not given the benefit of the doubt. And this is something else. When you have a narrative, you no longer give people the benefit of the doubt. Give people that honor, that respect of the benefit of the doubt. Give them that. They're owed that. If there's somebody who is meaningful to you, give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't assume the worst. And give them a chance. Also, don't cling to the stories, but instead, drop them. Just drop them. I know that's hard because you believe things and those narratives, but when you drop them, and you'll have stories come up, you'll have narratives happen, but when you drop them, something amazing happens. That belief system that predicates every thought and action that you take in your life suddenly gets turned upside down. You no longer are a slave to this narrative. And I hope you're really honestly in your mind right now, you guys, as you're watching this, or as you think about this in the coming hours after watching this, you're going to be thinking about this the rest of the day. What narratives do I have? What am I telling myself? What are those stories? And then in real time, this is going to be the fun part for you guys. In real time, you're going to hear a narrative come out and you're going to go, holy crap, Jimmy Moore. Damn you, Jimmy Moore. Because now I'm recognizing a narrative that I never saw before. You're welcome in advance, by the way. Because once you recognize the narratives, then you can correct them. Then you can make them factual. What actually is happening. And no longer are you a slave to these stories that you tell yourself. No longer do you live your life under the auspices of assumptions and presuppositions and all the things. You now will be living truly in who you are, what you believe, what you're about. And there's no greater feeling, you guys. No greater feeling. Our perception of the world is completely shaped by these stories, by these narratives that we tell ourselves. They are. We have this internal narrative about us. And this will be the last thought because I know I've hogged the time very much today, but I had a lot to say. We tell ourselves things about who we are. Oh, I'm no good at blank. I've got people in my life who tell me that. Jimmy, I'm no good at writing, so I could never be a writer like you. And I go, no. You're telling yourself you're no good at writing. So guess what you do when you tell yourself a narrative that you're no good at writing? Guess what happens? You're no good at writing. That's what happens. But if you tell yourself, I haven't tried writing yet, but I'm going to do the best that I possibly can at writing. And I'm going to be proud of what I write. You take on that mantra. It's a positive thing. It's a narrative that is true. You're not telling yourself what you are. You're free to now become a writer. I fought this with my co-author on my latest book coming out very soon, guys. We're like days away. One Step Deeper Journal, The Foundations. Brittany had a lot of these doubts in her mind. Oh, I'm just not good at this. Oh, I'm not experienced like you, Jimmy. I don't know what I'm doing. And I had to oftentimes stop her and say, no, we're not playing that. We're not playing that you don't know things. Do you think Jimmy knew things before he wrote his first book? Nope. Jimmy knew nothing. Jimmy believed in himself that while I have never done this before, I think I could get pretty good at it. And I start my 11th book next month. So I think I've gotten a little good at it. Same with podcasting. I had no experience podcasting. I did a little bit of radio in the 90s, but it was like music radio. It was nothing like what I do now. And you're going to have those things. Well, I don't have any broadcasting background. I'm not trained in this. My voice isn't all that special. Blah, blah, blah. So the narrative, then here's something else. The narrative is always going to limit who you really are. Let that sink in. The narrative you tell yourself is always going to limit who you really are. Now, I don't know about you, but I want nothing limiting me. I want nothing constricting me from flying free, being exactly who I am. I want nothing to stand in the way of that. Nope. Nothing is going to stand in the way of who Jimmy truly is, because I'm not going to tell things to myself that limit who I really am. And if you do that, that's the first big thing you can do to change that narrative. Stop believing narratives that limit you. Stop telling yourself you can't do something when you are very capable of doing whatever it is that your heart desires. Whatever. Oh, but I've never. Okay. Everybody that's done the thing that you want to do, they have been in the position where they too have never. It's true. Think about any successful person. He's in the news, so let's mention his name. Think about Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world. Big time innovator, highly respected now for his innovation on electric vehicles, flying to space, all the things. Okay? The day one of Elon starting his business venture, what if his narrative was, but I've never done this before? What if he believed in his heart, well, who am I to try to innovate and create? Who am I? I haven't proven this. I have no standing in this. What if he had that mentality? He did not, by the way. What if he had that mindset? He would have never become Elon Musk. And it's true. So these narratives holding you back, let that shit go. Start believing in yourself. Rewrite the narrative to who you want to be. And then go become the fulfillment of that narrative. Yep. All right, guys. This is now officially the longest I have talked in a soliloquy on this walk and talk series. But I feel like today I was on a roll. I was not going to shut up. So I'm going to shut up now. And I'm going to scroll back and see what you guys have to say. Thanks so much for being here. Happy Easter, Parkman. Thanks for that. Bulletproof says, go, Jimmy. Becky says, good morning. Happy Easter. Parkman says, I like your trail. Yeah, it's a nice trail. I wish it had more wooded area, but I take it for what it is. It is very warm out here. It's probably mid-70s now. And it's a little harder to breathe for me when it gets warmer. Mama Ors, happy Easter. What a beautiful day to walk. Thank you. I remember the dogs trying to follow you. Yes. Yes. Bulletproof, that was harrowing when I had dogs following me and I'm sitting there going, ugh. But this one was in a car as it drove by and okay, I got my attention. Happy Easter. Happy Easter. Thank you, guys. My friend Kelly Troops here. Happy Easter to you. Mama Oars, wow, this really hits home today. I feel like I do this all the time. Look, we all do it. There is no shame in acknowledging that you do narratives and that you create these storylines in your head. We all have. It's very human. It's very natural. So please don't beat yourself up about it. But now that you're self-aware of it, now you can make changes. And that was the point of today's walk and talk. Carnivore Shrink, my friend, is here. Preach Jimmy. Yes, I'm sure you teach these reframing techniques all the time, Carnivore Shrink, with your patience. Words can become truth, says Emily. Yes, words are truth if you believe them. They sure can. Carnivore Runner talking to me this morning. I've been trying to refrain the thought of I will not heal because it should have happened by now. Look, it's a very real narrative that a lot of people put on themselves. I will never lose weight because it hasn't happened yet. I will never heal from my chronic disease because it hasn't happened yet. It's so easy to fall into what I describe as fatalistic thinking. So many people, they do that. And I guess it's natural. I guess it's something that is a survival mechanism, because when something is inexplainable or unexplainable, the only thing you can conclude is, well, I guess it's just not going to happen. Whereas it could happen if the right circumstances come into play to make it happen. It just hasn't happened yet. And I think here's another little thing about narratives. If you tell yourself things, well, I can't lose weight. The way you reframe it with the yet is, I haven't lost weight yet. In your case, Carnivore Runner, I will not heal. You can reframe that as, well, I have not healed yet. Do you see how yet changes it? Makes it an anticipatory thing, puts a positiveness on it. It changes the whole meaning of that narrative you tell yourself. So maybe try that, guys. Any of these narratives that you start noticing, just reword it and put the word yet on the end. It works. It helps a lot. You get more of what you focus on. Yes, Carnivore Shrink. You do. Focus on those things that you want, not on the lamentations of what you don't have. That's true. Deep ass shit, Jimmy, says Paula. Yes. Yes. I don't know what's making me so philosophical the last few weeks, but I have been really deep in it. I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the healing I've done to myself, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. It's starting to come to a head for me. And I'm really feeling that. I'm getting ready to write, after the cold therapy book, I've got another book with Brittany I'm writing all about trauma. And already having some deep thoughts on that. So when you start thinking deeply about things, it really makes your mind open up to all the things in life. So I'm glad I can have this way to express myself here on the Walk and Talk. Embrace the struggle, always. Embrace it. It's going to be there anyway. Why fight it? Embrace it and recognize for what it is. And then use the struggle as the means for reframing what it is you really believe, what that story, what that narrative actually is. Thank you for this, Jimmy. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Carnivore Shrink. Mired thinking, says Emily. Give your brain a bath. How about an ice bath? I can dunk that brain below the water. I'll tell you what, I come up out of that cold water when I do my ice baths. And there is no better exhilarating feeling for the brain and all the thoughts and how you feel about yourself than that. If you don't make your head cold at least once in your day, do it and watch what happens. Whimsy Girl says, proud of you. I'm going through something very similar right now. Well, thank you, and hang in there. I know how difficult it can be in the midst of that, but you will rise above it, and you'll come out the other side a much better person. And all those narratives you might have believed in the midst of that, they melt away. They go away. They no longer dominate who you are. That's the freest feeling, when you live deep in narratives and then suddenly those narratives get revealed as simply untrue. Changes your life. Bulletproof says, I'm always aware that my assumptions are often nonsense because we always assume the worst. Yes, the brain defaults to that. Why, I don't know. Why don't we assume and default to the best? We always like to think the worst. Should you prepare for the worst? Absolutely. Should you believe the worst? Never. Prepare as if the worst will happen, but expect that the best will happen. And more times than not, it will fall somewhere in between those two. And things are never as bad as they seem in the moment. I'm a big believer in two-way friendships. I stop reaching out after a certain point. Maybe part of that is on me. But if someone wants to be friends, they need to do their part. Hey, I have found that in the dating world, I'll talk to a girl who seems to be interested in me, and we'll be going back and forth. Great conversation, maybe get on the phone. Then I'll send a message and no response for days. Now, I get it, people have lives, but if you're really interested in somebody, wouldn't you respond at least somewhat in a reasonable amount of time? So I'm coming to that conclusion that if you want to be in my life as a friend, as a lover, something, I need to hear from you. I need to feel wanted. Because if I don't feel wanted, I'm not going to feel like I need to want you. And that's where I'm at too. Some don't respond to messages, and it happens over and over. Others respond but never reach out to you first. I only let that go on so long before I stop, and then I never hear back. Yeah, that's how you know if somebody is as vested in you as you are in them. And I have learned that lesson abundantly, again, within the dating world. If a girl says she's interested, but then she never reaches out, I'm not going to sit there and beg her to talk to me. I'm not chopped liver. I'm prime rib, baby. So, you want a piece of this, you got to act like you want it. And if you don't, I need to move on. That's my philosophy anyway. Emily says, very hurtful thing to say, talking about my mom when I was 21. Well, it was seemingly hurtful, but then in the context of she didn't know I was beat, it wasn't hurtful at all. It was incomplete. Her narrative was that my dad was strict, but she had no idea he was abusive. So at the time, yes, hurtful. And it created a narrative in my mind that my mom didn't care. Then the truth came out 3 years ago, And then it made sense. And my mom and I have been close ever since. So getting rid of the narratives was such a key to that. You pick safe people now, Jimmy. You have grown so much. Thank you. I try to pick people that I feel like connect with me in real ways. I don't need friends who want to know about the weather and sports and never want to know about me. I tell Brittany, I blame her all the time. I said, you know, my expectation level for friends and even for a potential lover is very high now because of you. Because you've raised the bar of what I now expect in relationships of people. The depth of emotional intelligence, just understanding your life, understanding what you want in life, where you're going, all of that's important. And if somebody doesn't have that quality, I don't know how I can be friends / potential lovers with them, because that's my life and it's who I am. Crossing the big street, guys, hang with me. Very busy traffic here. Thank you, Jimmy, says Paula. You're welcome. Emily says vulnerability is power, and you have a handsome face. You're very biased as my friend, Emily, but thank you. Obstacles are opportunities. They are. They really are. Survivors are the real winners. Yes. If you survived a crappy childhood, applaud yourself. Because many people dive deeply into alcoholism, drugs, and other destructive behaviors, and they never recover. If you not only recover from that, but then make something beautiful in this world, real survivors. I think about my life and all the things that were said to and about me by my dad, that I would never amount to anyone, and anything in my life, I would really never accomplish anything, that I'm no good, blah, 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 all the bullshit they told me. And I see the last 10 years of my life, all the books that I wrote, all the lives that people, that have changed for people because they read words that I wrote, or they've watched videos that I've done, or they've listened to podcasts that I've done. The world around me is a better place because I'm in it. And it would be easy for me to believe that narrative of my father, but I had to prove that narrative wrong. And I feel like I've done that now. I feel like I've gotten to the point where I know my value in the world, and I know what I offer, and I'm proud of me. Good morning, guys. How are y'all? And so, child abusers are stealth, says Mary. Yes. My dad, if you met him, he's such a charmer. He's very charming and gets a lot of his self-worth from, or at least he used to, a lot of his self-worth from the acts that he would do for people. So he was all the time doing things for other people, fixing their air conditioner, lending them a helping hand. He would do all these acts of service. And that was his way of saying, see what a good, upstanding member of society that I am. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, he was beating the living hell out of Jimmy and berating me and making me feel this big and worthless. And most people were oblivious to it because all they saw was the charmer, the guy who did things for people. Well, he would never beat his kid. That's preposterous. So it was a nice front. So you're right. These people that abuse kids, they're very stealth about it. Because you would look on the outside and go, they're nothing like, no. You just couldn't believe that could be true. And yet that's their shield. They use the good works, the good deeds, the good image to hide who they really are. And people buy it. This is why victims of abuse aren't believed. Nope, they're not believed. And that's unfortunate. Kira says, I like to expose myself to the people that broke my heart as a form of mental strength training. It hurts less and I'm getting stronger. Pain is my fuel to lift iron. Microdose EMO. Pain works. Yes. Yeah. Mental pain work. Thank you. I was like, EMO? What's the EMO? I know your pain, embrace it and use it. Yes, you do know my pain. You're one of the few people, the dozen people in the world, Kira, that knows my story. And it will make the hair on the back of your head stand up. Hello, Cherish. Thanks for being here. Jane says, sending big love, darling. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Bulletproof says, when my greatest former friend threw me away, a group of others did as well. Yeah. When I left my wife, I lost 90% of my friends. It was not insignificant. And look, I get it. People take sides in those kinds of things. I will give credit to about a half dozen people that are friends with me still, plus friends with my ex. And, kudos to those people because they didn't take sides. They love both of us and they don't judge either one of us. They accept us as individuals for who we are. Unfortunately, that didn't happen with 90% of my friends and family. They just left me. But the cool thing that's happened over the past few years is I picked up so many new friends that are even better that I don't miss these people that left. Because the vast majority of those people that left, they were only Wayfarer friends anyway. They weren't genuine friends. The people I have in my life now, they are tried and true. I will go to bat for them and vice versa. Big hugs, Jimmy. Thank you, MZ Girl. Kira says, Team Moore lurks on your pages because they want to know if they're going to be included in your new book. Yeah. No, the only person I put in my new book from my family is my dad. I guess I did put a little something about my mom, but it wasn't about any abuse specifically that she did. You'll find out when you get the book. You'll see. Emily says, you're bold and empowered. Your bravery inspires us to be brave too. Thank you. I just try to give people permission to be real. I think in this society, we're told to shut up, put on a face, and move on with your life. I'm sorry, that's not an option. What if that thing that happened to me is still impacting my life today? And for many people, those things are impacting their life today. And so you can't just discard those people. And yet society tells you to discard them. Not Jimmy. Jimmy's going to highlight them. DeMarco says, happy Easter. My problem is I think I'm great at everything. Hey, that's okay. If you think you're great at everything, go get it. Go get it, man. I love the confidence. Bulletproof says, I love it when Jimmy yells at the camera. I get impassioned sometimes, as you well know. As you well know, Bulletproof. Cherish says, yes, flip that script. Always. Don't let the narrative that you told yourself that's been a negative narrative, don't let that rule your life. Flip it, make it positive, and watch how your life transforms. Cherish says, a good rant. Thank you for that. Emily says, choose limitless narratives. Yeah. What are those narratives that leaves the door open for you to become who you were always meant to become. This is something else. When you create a narrative that is limiting, how much of your hopes and dreams in your life are you stifling? How much of your life are you letting pass you by because you're not seeing the bigger picture? And so narratives that aren't serving you well, get those out of your life. Even if you've believed them your whole life, get those limiting narratives out of your life and replace them with limitless ones. Your life will change. Parkman always has to make a joke. My heart desires dark chocolate. Well, eat the damn dark chocolate, bro. Great talk, Mr. Moore. I needed it today, says Sleuth of Truth. Well, Mr. Moore is my dad. I'm Jimmy, but thank you. Yes. Mama Orr, I also have to believe in myself and know I can do the hard things. I still want to do a podcast. Mama Orrs, what is stopping you from doing a podcast? I have people that come to me all the time. They're like, I can't be a good podcaster. I'm like, why? They're like, well, I'm not as good as you. I'm like, well, number one, I've done this for a very long time. A decade and a half of talking behind the screen, behind the microphone, just about nutritional health. And even before that, like I said, I did radio back in the 90s. And so I was used to talking. If you're trying to compare yourself to me, don't do that. If you have a passion for speaking and you're pretty good at it, just start it. There is no wanting to do a podcast, Mama Orrs. Do it. I'm serious. Just do it. Just start it. And if you don't know how to put things on like iTunes and all that, do a video one. Get on YouTube, start your video podcast, get pretty good there. And I'll tell you a secret. So before I started the Living La Vida Low Carb show, I did 100 episodes of a show called Living La Vida Low Carb on YouTube. And that's how I kind of got my chops for starting to talk behind the microphone. Was I was on camera. Me and my ex-wife used to do these videos teaching about low carb. That's how you start. There is no believing in yourself and waiting to do it. It's just doing it. So you've got your marching orders. I want to see your first episode. I want you to tag me when you post it on social media, and I want to see it within the next month. Got it? I know you hate me right now, but that's just how I roll. Whimsy Girl says, I need to rewrite my narrative. Yes, we all do. We all have narratives that they don't serve us well. So rewrite them in such a way that they start serving you for your good and not keeping you mired in the bad. Emily says, yet. I like that reframe. Very nice. Yes, if you put yet on the end of it, it means it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Parkman says, Jimmy crushes these walks. That one today about exhausted me, though. It was so hot out there. Got back here. I got the air conditioning on. I'm just like, cool me down. I don't like being hot. Cherish says, now I have to take 2 to make a thing go right in my head. It takes 2 to make a thing go right. It takes 2 to make it outside. DeMarco says, a vision is not imaginary. It's your imagination that creates a vision. Ooh, look who's getting all philosophical on us today. Hello, Linda. Good morning. Have a blessed day yourself. Awesome changes. Thank you. Mama Orr says, got it. All right, so I'm going to see it in the next month. Let's make that happen, my dear. Let's make that happen. But guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's Walk and Talk. What a topic. The relentless narrative we tell ourselves. Hopefully by now you realize we tell ourselves a lot of things that simply aren't true. We make up stories to help fill in the gaps of our life. And sometimes those stories aren't necessarily based on any facts. They're just based on what you made up in your head. So start evaluating. If you're watching this and listening to this and you're starting to mull over what are those things you believe and why you believe them, and just start asking why. Why do I believe that? Why is this a part of my life? And watch how much of your life you'll notice is predicated on this narrative. All right, guys, as always, if you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, Facebook, or even here on Instagram, go follow me over on Instagram at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. I do go live on Sundays. I may be moving it back because it's getting a little hot at 11 a.m. Eastern, so I might move it back to, say, 8 a.m. Eastern on Sundays, and so I will let you know. Go follow me, and then I'll put on my stories and on a reel what time I will be going live. But I know I'm going to be here next Sunday, but then the next Sunday I will be in Austin, Texas. So I'm at the Paleo FX conference the week after that. So next Sunday I will have one, but then not the next week. So, and then the whole month of May, I'm taking off from all of my podcasts, which will include these walk and talks, so I can start working on my cold therapy book. So next week will be the final walk and talk until June. So I'll be back in June, but I need time to start working on my cold therapy book, which I hope to get a lot of the groundwork for that one off the ground in those weeks off. So thank you so much for watching today. It's always a pleasure to have your interactions. Go make yourself a wonderful rest of the day. I will be back here at 5 p.m. Eastern time for my ice bath. And as hot as I am right now, I could really pop in there right now. I'm so hot. It's just so burning up. But I'll do it at 5 o'clock Eastern. So I'll see you guys then. Bye, guys.